This is a huge week for the 49ers. Good morning or good afternoon, wherever you are. Welcome to the 49ers Playbook. We're your host, Grant Cohn, former Raiders offensive coordinator Tom Walsh. We've been doing this every week. As you know, we're going to break down what the Niners should do on offense, on defense against the Carolina Panthers. This is an interesting test for the 49ers this week. But before we get into the Panthers, let's wrap up the Cardinals. Niners put 41 on them. What did you think of this performance, and did it change your outlook on what the Niners can possibly do this season?
Grant, I was obviously pleased to see them put up the points on the board. Then conversely, at the same time, a little bit concerned because they made Jacoby Brissett look like an all-pro quarterback, racking up 452 yards, 2 touchdowns, I think. But still, the concern about the defense being quality enough to get not only into the playoffs, but to get beyond just a wild card game or whatever. Right now, the Niners are not in the top 7 for the playoff hunt as of today. But the season's not over, obviously, and that's why it's important. They're going to get another test, but I thought that the Niners did a pretty good job mixing it up offensively. I'd still like to see some of the other players like Bourne and Tonjes and those guys get some balls, to see them on the field and to contribute, because they're going to be needed as they get down the stretch run, and those guys are going to have to be there to be able to make plays, and so that's important for them.
I believe the Niners are currently the 7th seed right now because the Lions lost. So they're teetering right on the brink of playoff contention. What I did think was interesting about this game is just how awful their pass rush is, and how not having a pass rush can make even Jacoby Brissett look like an all-pro. As you said, it seemed like the Niners were intent on maybe getting a pass rusher until Fred Warner went down. And then he went down. I don't know if they got depressed or something, decided there was no point. But really, as great as he is, I don't think linebacker's been the issue for the 49ers. They keep having backup step up. They can defend the run okay. It's just this pass rush that makes, like you said, every quarterback look incredible.
Well, that's the problem. And the worst part about it is, the theory is if 4 don't get there, you have to send 5. If 5 don't get there, you have to send 6. Well, the problem is if the Niners do send more than 4 and choose to play men, then they have some vulnerability in the secondary with Stout and even Green at times and those guys. And if they send more than 4 and play a fire zone scheme, as they tried several weeks ago, they've got some holes that are hard for them to hide and try to patch up with weakness in the ability of linebackers to cover a significant amount of ground, in a fire zone scheme, because you're kind of going to a 3 under 3 deep package if you send 5 on a fire zone scheme.
Yeah, after this last game, Robert Saleh was talking, and he said that, against the Rams, they tried to send pressure, and it burned them. It didn't work. They didn't get there, and they gave up a lot of explosive plays. So their strategy against the Cardinals was to not bring pressure, play soft zone. I think even Kyle said this, and make it at least difficult for the Cardinals to go down the field. They responded with a league record of completions, but at least they gave up fewer than 40 points.
Well, the other thing too, Grant, is that when the opposing team commits 17 penalties, that's going to give the Niners a huge advantage because of the amount of negative yardage that the Cardinals in this case are losing, not only from a holding penalty or whatever, but if they gain yards down the field and the play is called back, they're losing those yards they gained in addition to being penalized the yards for the penalty, and that helped save the Niners in a couple of situations.
I think it's easy to look at this game and say, gee, if Jacoby Brissett with Michael Wilson and Bam Knight can do this to the Niners defense, like, who can they stop? Are they going to constantly be in shootouts? Well, that's one side of the ball. The other side of the ball is the offense. It was Brock Purdy's first game back. What did you think of him? Did he look 90% healthy? Where did you see the lingering effects? And George Kittle's been saying that this is going to be like an elite Super Bowl offense that's going to carry him. Obviously, it was the Cardinals. I mean, do you feel like he's right?
I was pretty pleased with the way Purdy played. But the bottom line is I still like to see a little bit more improvisational skill from him, a little bit more movement from him. And then maybe as the weeks go along, he will feel more confident and play without that mental hesitation that he may have and feeling that, is the toe going to hold up? Can I sprint? Can I accelerate? Can I put my foot in the ground and go? And, they should be better this next week because Purdy should feel better about himself and should feel more confident. I'm sure he was sore after the ball game, but by now, especially with a Monday night game, he's got an extra day in which to heal and recover. And so I think that, things bode well for them. I have no apprehension if I have to put in Mac Jones. So I think the Niners are in a very rare situation where they have two quarterbacks with whom they both can be successful, which regardless of which of the quarterbacks is on the field. And that's a benefit that I don't think too many other teams in the league can say that they have, that ace up their sleeve like they do with Mac Jones.
Yeah, and that's what's so interesting about this season for the 49ers. They keep making excuses and talking about the injuries they have and the players they don't have, and that's valid. But they also have something that maybe no other team in the NFL has, which is two good starting quarterbacks. There's franchises in the league that have none. And the Niners have two of them, and it seems like as long as you have that, you're a contender, or you should be.
Well, there's no question that they should be a contender. The bottom line, I think, they have enough weapons on offense, especially if they continue to grow and improve in the red zone efficiency. The main concern that I have, and probably anybody else who looks at that ball club, is can their defense be able to hold up when it comes to a critical time because they can't rush the passer. And, it's a passing league, and they're going to find out again this coming Monday night as to what attributes that they still have in their defense to be able to get them into the playoffs.
I got another concern, and this might be more of a short-term concern, but Mac Jones was a gift from the football gods. He helped them get through the rough part of their season with all these injuries. They had another gift, Eddie Pinheiro. And we're going to talk about the injuries next. The Niners, they seem to lose two or three guys every game. They seem to lose a player once a week in practice. One of the guys they lost this week was their kicker. Hamstring injury. He had been perfect until this game, at least from field goals. Now he's going to miss 2 games in the bye. Maybe he'll come back after the bye. And until then, the Niners have the guy who just got cut and replaced by Jake Moody. I mean, what is this going to do to the team?
Well, it's critical. I tell you what, it's not only on being able to kick the ball off where you want to place it in the different landing zones that they have, which can restrict an opponent's kickoff return yardage, but then the Niners notoriously have been more reliable and dependent upon field goals in the red zone than they are in touchdowns. Their efficiency doesn't show enough percentage of touchdowns in the red zone. They've had to rely upon kicking the field goals, and that's where the game is going to be won and lost as you go down into tighter ball games, tougher opponents. You're playing on the road in bad weather in a couple of weeks. How is that going to shape up for you when it comes down to the field goal being a must-have situation?
All right, so we got 6 games left. Where are we at? 7-4? 6 games left, and the Niners already had a bunch of injuries. They're starting to get guys back. They need to keep these players healthy and fresh for the stretch run. It's not exactly something the Niners have always done so well. If Kyle Shanahan were a basketball coach, he's like the kind of guy who would play his 3 best players 48 minutes a night. What would you recommend for Kyle to get this team to January?
I think the important thing from my perspective in looking at it is how can I utilize some of my other players with very intelligent substitution patterns in the first half of the ball game, in the third quarter. I go back to this last week. If I'm not mistaken, with a little over 8 minutes to go in the game, the Niners were up by 25 points? Mm-hmm. And I'm thinking, okay, when do you start to say, okay, I'm going to pull out a running back, for example, McCaffrey, and stick in another running back like Robinson Jr., or I'm going to get Bourne in the ball game instead of Jennings, or I'm going to get Tonjes in the game instead of Kittle for a couple of plays just to get some relief for my starters so that I don't grind them in a situation where they don't necessarily have to be on the field for every series and every snap. And I think the key is to help him in that situation is if he has specific plays that he wants to run, if those guys get into the ball game, so he can feed them a ball, get him into the flow of the game, get him into the continuity, allow him to get some reps at the same time he's getting some rest for his starters. But to be up by 25 with 8 minutes to go, and you still got your, McCaffrey out there, you've got Kittle out there, you haven't spotted them enough, as you get into this situation next Monday night, and then with the game the following Sunday, I cannot just grind down my starters.
Yeah, and it's like you're not talking about pulling Jawan Jennings and playing, some rookie Jordan Watkins who you can't trust. You're talking about pulling Jawan Jennings or Ricky Pearsall up 25 late and putting in Kendrick Bourne, who's 30, who's been a starter, who's arguably the most consistent wide receiver on the team this year. I mean, you're talking about putting in Brian Robinson Jr., who's been a starter in the league, Jake Tonjes, who was absolutely terrific while George Kittle was out. I mean, you're not talking about just giving away points. It's just preserving the older players that you need in the playoffs and finding roles for the guys who are still good on your team. You gave Demarcus Robinson a 2-year contract. You got to find a role for him.
Well, you've got to utilize your players, and you can extend the life of your starters and your quality players by utilizing your second tier, your backup players, and at the same time giving your starters relief. You're also giving experience and confidence to your backups who now are playing and to whom you're feeding the ball and allowing them to develop and further enhance their skill set.
There's an old, saying in football, is it the Jimmies and the Joes or the X's and the O's? And Kyle's very much an X's and O's kind of guy. And plays are very important, clearly. And it's a big advantage for the Niners, his playbook. But it seems like he doesn't do a good job of preserving his players. And with this longer season, 18 weeks, only one team gets a bye week. It seems like the team that's going to win doesn't necessarily have the best playbook. It's just the team with the most healthy players. And you know what? That's probably not going to be the 49ers based on, history.
Well, the important thing also is, besides having them healthy for the game, I'm always concerned about how many players Kyle has who get injured in practice. And, this time of year, I mean, you've been at this game. They've been in training camp or whatever since mid-August, late August. You've got to dial back on the intensity, and you have to have certain segments of practice where you say, okay, here's the tempo for this period, and here's what we want to achieve in this period. And then you have another period, have a break, and say, okay, now I want this period to be full speed, thud, no one goes to the ground. And then another period you have, okay, this will be at a jog through pace. We're going to pull back and not go full speed, but we're going to accomplish play polish or whatever and be proficient in our assignment, in our alignment, our execution, but it's not going to be 100% full speed. And you still can practice that way and have your players learn their assignments, learn their technique, and execute it and get the muscle memory ingrained where you want it without cracking the whip and going 100 miles an hour. And, I cannot afford soft tissue injuries at this time of year. And the other thing about which people have to be concerned, and which Kyle should be aware of, I'm sure, is that as we get into the fall, your temperatures and your climate have changed, your weather conditions have changed. As the temperatures drop, it takes longer for players to warm up. I've got to make sure they're laddered up. Also, it's easier for them to get cooled down standing around in practice. And so the important thing is to be able to keep players moving and keep them fluid and, not allow their body core to drop and they get stiff standing around. They cool down. And then when you put them back out and expect them to go full speed, bam, the rubber band snaps. And all of a sudden you got a hamstring and the guy's out for 3 weeks.
I think one of the phenomenon that's so strange that fans don't understand is how this sport, football, has gotten, safer and safer and safer throughout the years. less practice, no two-a-days, less contact and changing the kickoff return, like less concussions, all that. But yet it seems like non-contact soft tissue injuries increase. And it seems like the same thing is happening in the NBA. I mean, we saw it in the playoffs, player after player just pulling their Achilles or tearing their Achilles, trying to perform some type of basketball act. So Steve Kerr was recently asked what he thinks about this, and he said he believes wear and tear, the speed, the pace, the mileage are increasing the risk of today's players suffering soft tissue injuries. Do you feel like there's any lesson the Niners can take from that and apply to their team?
Grant, the key thing I think also that everyone fails to understand is today's athletes are bigger, stronger, more musculature structure on them, to have more weight on their bodies, less body fat. And, I think the bottom line also is that additional weight on the ligaments and the tendons over time, when you especially have such explosive actions like in basketball or football, you're going to have more issues with injuries of that nature, because the load impact and the stress you put on your joints, after a while, you're overloaded the body mass to where your ligaments and tendons just cannot handle the stress that you're putting on them with that sudden movement that you're making, because you're maxing out what the body can handle.
All right, Kyle, you owe us a nickel for that. We just helped you keep your team healthy. Now let's help you beat the Carolina Panthers. We don't know if the Carolina Panthers are a playoff team. The Niners see themselves as one, and if they are going to go somewhere, they're going to have to beat teams better than Carolina. Carolina has been pretty hot recently. I mean, their quarterback threw for 450 yards against a team with a real pass rush last week. Now he gets to face the 49ers. Let's talk about the Niners defense first against Bryce Young and Ted McMillan and this Panthers offense. What's the key for the Niners in this matchup?
Oh, prior to this week, Carolina's thrown for 185, 190 yards a game, and they come out and the kid throws for 487 and 3 touchdowns, and they got receivers now, McMillan and Leggett, catching touchdown passes and balls close to 100 yards or more in yardage. The key thing, and also the one thing about which is a plus for the Niners, is the number of sacks that Bryant, they've nailed him. Okay. Now the bottom line with Bryce is that, he had 5 sacks against the Falcons. Can the Niners get there? He's showing that he can complete balls. So if I can't get the pressure on him and he can stand back there and pick apart my secondary, I can't allow Leggett to run by me. He's one of the bigger vertical threats that they've got. McMillan's catching balls left and right. So how can I corral them? The run game, didn't do a lot this past week. Dowell's not bad, but, he's not a household name. So the one thing about which I'm concerned is, how well are the Niners going to tackle in space if they're playing soft zone and allowing these receivers and running backs and tight ends to catch the ball? Because they can catch it for a 5-yard throw, but are they going to gain 5 or 6 yards after the throw, or are we going to hold them to the catch of 5 yards and then only 1 additional yard after the catch with contact? So the other thing is, are my underneath coverage guys, my linebackers, without Fred Warner there, are they going to be able to tackle in space and secure the tackle, or are we going to have Carolina Panther guys falling forward for 3 and 4 more yards after a catch? And all of a sudden, from a 2nd and 5, where it should have been, now becomes a 2nd and 2 or a 2nd and 3 situation.
I see. So Tatum Bethune won't be playing in this game. He's got, I believe, a high ankle sprain. So you say this is going to be a game where Upton Stout, Curtis Robinson, D. Winters, a safety down around the line of scrimmage, those guys tackling the corners will determine just how good the Niners defense is in this game.
It's going to be, if I'm going to play zone, if Salah's going to play a soft zone and try to keep everything in front of him, now you're conceding the catch, but you cannot concede additional yards after the catch. The key thing is, okay, if I'm going to let them catch it at 4 or 5 yards, I've got to be able to be there and make the tackle at 4 or 5. If you start to see the Panthers going with a 5-yard catch and they're gaining 4, 5, 6, 7 yards after the catch, and it takes multiple Niners to try to bring them down, the Niners are in for a long night. But if I can catch it and tackle right there, then I've got a chance to make the Panthers have to execute and play after play to march down the field methodically and not give up yards after the catch.
One thing I've noticed when Saleh goes to this philosophy of defense, this approach of soft zone, make the offense make a mistake. Offenses tend to go at Renardo Green, and they tend to want to make him tackle. It seems like he's maybe their best corner in man-to-man coverage, but in zone, he's not a good tackler, or teams are trying to make him be physical, and you sort of take away what he does best. That's an interesting one to watch because I don't know. What have you noticed from Renardo Green in terms of his physicality on the edge?
The bottom line is, theoretically, our philosophy was always we're going to draft corners to cover, not to tackle. And so the thing is, if you're going to run a zone package.
You didn't play soft zone with the Raiders, though.
Yeah, you have to be able to evaluate how well your players are going to tackle if you're going to be a soft zone ball club.
Yeah. It seems like a waste of Diamador Lenore.
Well, he's not being attacked in the passing game, so he's forcing opponents to have a half-field offense. So in one respect, that's a positive. But then on the other hand, can those players who are being attacked and on whom the opponent is focusing, are they going to be able to hold up? And if not, how can I hold them up? For example, if I need to give him help on the weak side, I can play Lenore man-to-man and zone the other half of the field. So I have extra defenders shoring up where I'm the weakest part of my defense.
Let me ask you this. So the Niners, they have a choice. They know they don't have a pass rush. They can either try to manufacture one by rushing 5 and 6, or they can just concede that they won't have one that day, play soft zone coverage, and try to tackle. They brought pressure against the Rams. It didn't work. They have Matt Stafford, and they got a bunch of big plays. So they went the opposite approach against the Cardinals, who are terrible, and they won. But Jacoby Brissett really did complete, an NFL record of completions. Which approach do you think is the smartest way to go against the Panthers? It's not Matthew Stafford, but it's definitely a better quarterback than Jacoby Brissett.
I know this is going to be, that's why the hardest part for the Niners for Saleh is going to be able to say he may have a game plan going into the game, but then once he sees what the Panthers are doing and how they're attacking his defense, he needs to be able to make in-game adjustments and not wait until halftime to say, okay, wait, we got to go to plan B, or we got to get out the whiteboard here and draw up something else defensively. He needs to go into a game where he has a second coverage concept or a second front concept or another look that he can present somewhere in the first quarter also to be able to give a changeup to Bryce Young and to the Carolina offensive scheme, where they have to be able to make some adjustments themselves as opposed to them dictating to what he's going to have to do.
Seems dangerous to me to let Bryce Young play 7-on-7 football. He was the number 1 pick in the draft. You saw what Jacoby Brissett did to your defense. The reason you beat the Cardinals is because they gave you the ball on the 1-yard line. They gave you the ball on the 10-yard line. They committed 17 penalties. You didn't necessarily play winning defense. And if you have that same approach to the Panthers, their quarterback's a lot better than the Cardinals quarterback. And Ted McMillan is a really good wide receiver. You liked him a lot before the draft. Is he everything you expected?
He is, and that's why I thought he would be an early first-round pick. In this day and age, it's all about throwing the football, and you've got to have tall, lean, lanky, explosive players on the outside. The quickest way to get to the end zone from point A to point B is over the top of the defense. If I throw the ball over the top, I've only got to beat one corner. If I run the ball, I got, 11 defenders between me, the ball carrier, and my end zone, their end zone. And so, hey, that's why the thing is, the old axiom of speed kills. I got to be able to go over the top, and that's going to be a concern. Now, if Saleh does play man coverage, I would not be in favor of having one of his corners, other maybe than Lenore, line up and play bump and run. I don't want to see up and stout line up on the slot. And if I'm smart, I'm the Panthers, I'm going to get McMillan in the slot and nickel against Upton Stout. I mean, the guy's so short you could eat soup off his head. Okay, the bottom line is the slot fade is a give me touchdown against Upton Stout. Mm-hmm. Okay, so if I'm Carolina, how can I match up McMillan or Leggett against the weakest cover man of the Niners? And if I'm Saleh, I don't want to put those guys up in a bump and run situation and give the quarterback and the receiver an easy read to know what the coverage is going to be. And then all of a sudden, bam, the ball's going down the field over the top of the defense when I cannot afford to have that happen.
I see. That's a big reason Saleh can't really play man-to-man coverage right now, because once you see it, there's so many guys you can go. I was starting with Upton Stout. Oh, it's man-to-man coverage? Okay. Well, we're going to put our best receiver in the slot, and we're going to run a fade, and he's 6'5", and he's 5'8", and he's been giving up these catches all year, and we know what's going to happen. It's going to be a catch or a penalty. So it seems to me like I don't really blame Saleh here because they didn't make the move at the deadline. His choice is to play man-to-man coverage and potentially let offenses go down the field fast thanks to big plays and penalties, or to play soft zone and just kind of slow them down and hope that the Niners offense can score faster.
Well, the key also is, you just mentioned the word offense. If I'm Kyle, I want to be able to milk the clock this game. I don't want to score quickly. I want to have time-consuming drives. I want to be more methodical about what I'm doing. Of course, the Niners have not shown a propensity to get the ball down the field vertically, so I don't see where there's going to be a deep score shot where it's going to be a one-and-done offensive series for the Niners, where the ball goes over the top of the defense, or McCaffrey breaks an 85-yard run, or Robinson Jr. hits one for 55 yards, because they have not shown that ability all year. So the best defense for the Niners is for their offense to maintain ball control. And this is a game where you want to be able to have the ball 38 to 40 minutes minimum, and have Young and all those guys, McMillan and Leggett, are on the sideline watching and cooling off, sitting on the bench.
I see. So the Niners are going to need Brock Purdy to convert on third down, stay ahead of the chains, no turnovers. I mean, big plays are nice, but they don't necessarily need him to be hyper aggressive. They need him to keep the offense on the field with long drives as much as possible.
It's about milking the clock. It wouldn't hurt the Niners also to think about taking the air out of the ball. If they would be able to run the ball with any kind of consistency. And, God, I cringe when I see them start to run outside plays, outside zone, the crack tag toss plays and things like that, because those have not been, on the whole, very efficient for the Niners thus far this year. And, I'm sure Kyle sees the statistics each week. He's got the analytics there, and he knows which runs are working the best and which runs have worked well against the Panthers in previous games by having the opponent scout report given to him. He's got to find a way to be able to take advantage of some of the weaknesses that the Niners have from a blocking perspective to be able to manufacture some yards in the run game.
It seems to me that Kyle Shanahan wants to, why does he want to run outside? His dad was the outside zone guy. He's the outside zone guy. Also, his best blockers are George Kittle and Trent Williams. So he's trying to get them at the point of attack. It's not working because Christian doesn't have the burst that he used to have to get to the edge and threaten the defense that way. Are there other blocking schemes the Niners could go to that would leverage George Kittle at the point of attack that are more downhill between the tackles' runs?
Well, they can use that. Here's the other thing I notice about the Niners. Kyle does not use what I call an insert blocking scheme with an extra offensive player that he can bring into the box prior to the snap to be able to have a downhill blocking angle to block a safety or an extra defender.
Rams do this all the time. The Rams do this all the time, right?
Great.
Yeah.
The Rams are excellent at it. A lot of other ball clubs are very good at it as well, of saying, okay, I can line my flanker up outside the tight end, but the strong safety hanging in the C gap, by the time the play happens and matures, that wide receiver cannot get down in there and root him out. But if I go to an insert blocking scheme and bring him in short motion, or call him in and sat him up in the C gap as
almost like a bunch formation.
Correct. And put him in a cheat set.
Yeah.
to be able to get up inside the C gap and get heads up to block the safety, I've got a chance for now McCaffrey or Robinson Jr. to gain some extra yards.
Yeah, it seems to me that it's a dilemma of what to do with George Kittle because he's such a great player, and you could put him at tight end in line in the 3-point stance, and he's great at that. But if you could get him in a 2-point stance, moving around in the slot, in motion, it seems like he would even pose an even bigger threat to the defense as a receiver, and he could still be an effective blocker that way as well.
Yeah, correct. I can bring him in a 2 tight end formation and have him be the move guy and use him as a pseudo fullback and insert him as the blocker to block the strong safety. So now I got George Kittle. I can also double down with an offensive lineman and allow George to go block a linebacker because he can match up against the backer where a wide receiver won't be as efficient. But I can use George as an insert blocker, and then I can play another individual at the base tight end formation. So I'm playing 12 personnel. I don't have Juszczyk in the ball game because I'm using Kittle as the move guy who also can run routes and release inside the line of scrimmage and run crossing routes, the deep opposite routes, and let him obviously run routes against linebackers as opposed to against a safety or against a combination where he's being doubled by a safety and a linebacker. So I can make it efficient that way.
This is another reason why I feel like the Niners shouldn't play Juszczyk so much, because when he's on the field, then the ways in which you can use George Kittle are so much more limited. When they made Luke Farrell their highest paid free agent addition of the offseason, I thought the vision was to have Farrell as the inline wide tight end and which would allow George Kittle to move around and the Niners to be more flexible with the way they use him. They haven't really done a lot of that yet. It seems like a no freaking brainer. And now that we're getting into the meat of the season, be a good way to fully take advantage of George Kittle.
Yeah, I think he would be outstanding as an insert blocker in the run game. And now I can run, between the tackles more aggressively because I can afford to double team a defensive lineman to get movement at the point of attack and then insert George in there to block the linebacker. Or if I want to base block it, I can insert George in there to block the strong safety so that McCaffrey does not have a free defender within 5 yards of the line of scrimmage when the safety fills. And so that would be an excellent concept for the Niners to utilize. And also I could get George better matchups in the passing game.
Yeah, who's a better lead blocker between the tackles, George Kittle or Kyle Juszczyk?
I'll tell you what, I don't know if it was this past week, I saw Juszczyk blocking on a goal line play, and he actually went to his knees and went down on his face to the ground, and the running back, McCaffrey, bounced off the defender Juszczyk was supposed to block, on whom he didn't block because he slid off of the guy down to the ground, and they still scored a touchdown. So I just, I know Kyle has his favorites and all that, but there comes a point in time when you need to move to the next generation of, players and concepts and utilize the players who you have who can be the most productive for you. It's a team concept. So it's no longer just about plays, but it's about players and how I can get the maximum benefit from utilizing them in a ball game.
Yeah, I mean, every team has different identities, and it seems like this team, it's very much a pass-centric team, and their best receivers are the tight end and the running back. So the more you can get those guys flexed out in motion in different areas so the defenses don't know where they're going to be and what they're going to do to stop them, the better. So Kyle, we've helped you with the running game. Now we're going to help you with the passing game. We're at the pass breakdown, the Playbook breakdown segment powered by Pass Reps, where we make you smarter about football. Tom, let's get into the first play. This one is called Mixer Slider / Hank. How can the Niners use this one?
Now, see, the great thing about it, and I know, Kyle is apprehensive, and you can use this out of 13 personnel. You can use it out of 12 personnel. You can use it out of 21 personnel. And, it's a good combination to be able to get the ball out of your hands quickly. I can be in the gun or I can be under center. And I can also use a mixer with the slider and the spacing concept with 13 personnel or with 12 personnel, or now this is the thing about which I have a concern, especially as you go into the season, further into the opponents who you're going to be seeing down the road, is pass protection. I cannot always have my quarterback at the same depth, at the same set, at the same rhythm and throwing the ball. So this is a way to be able to get the ball in and out of your hands more quickly and be able to allow a catch and run concept. I'm surprised that they don't find a better way to use Pearsall even in the quick game and get him a ball rather than those 0-yard screens and things like that. But be able to pop them with a ball in the quick game on a slant or even from the slot on a shoot route like that, and let him catch and run. If I'm not going to hold the ball long enough to allow him to go vertically, I've got to create horizontal concepts for him to be able to have a catch and run.
Yeah, what happened to the 49ers quick game? I mean, when they had Deebo Samuel, they were always threatening those 0-yard routes and end arounds and jet sweeps, and it seems like all that gadget stuff is gone.
Well, they don't have any. Okay, here's the bottom line. They let Deebo go, but they did not. They wanted to keep the same concept, but they did not replace Deebo. So this other kid, this little punt return, kickoff return guy, who had a big return last Sunday, is not the guy who's your jet sweep guy. And so, they have not replaced Deebo. And so therefore that element is gone from their game. So now they've got to manufacture other ways by which they can accomplish a short, quick pass concept and be able to, quote unquote, move the chain, so to speak, and occasionally pop a play. But, they don't have that.
I mean, they can still check the ball down to Christian McCaffrey. It's a safe play. It keeps them ahead of the chains, but they don't have that explosive element in their offense. I mean, it seemed like for a while the Niners were the most explosive team at passes that traveled behind the line of scrimmage.
They were. I tell you, I go back a couple of years ago, and I used to kid you. I used to call him Jimmy Gimmies when Garoppolo was the quarterback. He'd go through a ball game. By halftime, he'd have a couple hundred yards passing, but maybe only 80 of them or 85 of them were beyond the line of scrimmage. They all were 0 yards or minus yard passes, and his air yards were negligible because they had done everything at or behind the line of scrimmage.
That's right. It's interesting. Well, look, you just saw the breakdown. Now go test your own football IQ. Pass Reps updates weekly. It's just $1.99 a month. The link's below. Don't just watch the game. Call it. PassReps.com. Tom is putting these game plans together weekly. He puts the plays together weekly. And if you're a content creator, you're trying to talk X's and O's, it's great to have an actual visual aid to show your viewers. So, Tom, thank you for that. Let's get into the prediction. This is a big game for the 49ers. If they win it, if they lose it, what's at stake for the 49ers in this game?
Well, my concern is I cannot overlook Carolina. They haven't, packed their bags and, all that. They are a half a game out of the NFC South lead. They're 6-5 now. If Tampa Bay loses Sunday to the Rams and Carolina ends up for some reason winning Monday night, they're in first place in the NFC South. So they've got games for which to play for their own playoff ambitions. So, you cannot look lightly upon Carolina. So from that perspective, and the other thing is Monday Night Football, of course, the Niners always seem to shine, and you'll have Jerry Rice out there pregame strutting up and down the field, high-fiving everybody. You'll have a lot of electricity in the stands, in the fans and all that. And it'll be George Kittle's moment to shine on Monday Night Football in front of the nationwide audience. And so they're the only show in town. And so Kittle loves that. So he's going to be excited. McCaffrey's going to produce. So it'll be a good moment for them to put their best foot forward. Now, from the perspective that I would like to see is for the Niners, by the time the fourth quarter shows up, is to be able to have the game iced. Because I got to come back in a short week from a Monday night game. On Friday, I got to fly to Cleveland. I want to rest my guys and take hits away from them on Monday night in the fourth quarter and I hate to say this, I want to tell Kyle, do not give them needless repetitions. Do not expose these players like McCaffrey and Kittle and your other premier players to extra reps when the hay is in the barn and the game is over and you're out there padding stats and running plays to jack up yardage and all that kind of stuff and get guys Pro Bowl votes. You need to look beyond this ball game, win the thing in the first 3 quarters, get a series in the 4th quarter, and then start to judiciously substitute, thinking forward to what you're going to see the following Sunday with a short week, going to Cleveland, playing probably, it ain't going to be 72 degrees and sunny in Cleveland, okay? Let's understand something. By the end of November, it is not, Chamber of Commerce weather in Cleveland, Ohio. So I've got to be able to, that game I need. I've got players in Cleveland defensively who are going to really cause me concern from an offensive perspective. So I want to ice this ball game Monday night and make it a blowout by the end of the 3rd quarter. Dominate the clock, restrict the opportunities for Bryce Young to be able to throw the ball for 400 plus yards. He's normally 185, 187 yard a game quarterback. Okay. So the best way to do that is to dominate offensively and then be able to substitute and pull my guys, rest them up, get them fewer hurts. Because, hey, come Wednesday now, here's the other thing is important is with that less, I give my veterans a day off. Normally Wednesday, there's no practice for Trenton Williams. There's no practice for McCaffrey. There's limited work for Kittle. So now I've got, only a Thursday and a Friday morning practice before we get on a plane and fly to Cleveland. So I want to rest them as much as possible because they have one less day of recovery also. And when they're aging as they are, recovery is important.
So what you're saying is, even though it's Bryce Young and they're 6-4 and they have a lot to play for, the Niners should win this game. The biggest test that they face in the next few weeks is next week on a short week, on the road, potentially in the cold, in the rain, against Myles Garrett and Jim Schwartz, who's 9-1 against Kyle Shanahan. Even though it's probably going to be Shedeur Sanders, who might be awful, that is the real test for the 49ers because they're winning by scoring lots of points. It's going to be a lot harder to do that against Cleveland.
True. That's why it's important for my players to understand that our goal is to put this game away, put the car in the barn as quickly as I can and with as much dominance as I can demonstrate so that we can pull some guys and then get ready for Saturday, the walkthrough in Cleveland, and then go play on Sunday because it's going to be, plus you're going from West Coast to East Coast. It's a 10 a.m. kickoff. The other thing I would do is I would practice at 10 a.m. on Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday to get the players' body clock used to being on the field, wearing pads at the same time we're kicking off on Sunday in Cleveland.
They lose that game in Cleveland, they could miss the playoffs. That's a really interesting test. They got to get through Carolina first. Do you think this game will go according to the 49ers' plans? Do you think they'll be essentially done with the game early in the 4th quarter? Give me a score.
I say that the Niners should be able to hang minimum of 27-30 on Carolina. And if they can dominate the clock with the run game and a short passing game and mix it up and keep it clean, you should be able to restrict the amount of staff that Carolina gets. And Carolina should get no more than maybe 13 or 17 points because I'm not going to let them have the ball long enough. And so when they do get the ball, they're going to have to be able to try to push it down the field, which means they're going to have to play out of their normal character because they're going to be playing catch-up football. So, yeah, I want to be able to control the clock and find a way to take the out of the ball, so to speak, and keep my possessions long enough to where I can let Carolina sit on the bench and watch the game.
I like your prediction. I have a feeling Carolina is going to score more than 17. I just don't think much of this defense. I don't think Robert Saleh is even trying to do much. I think he has every excuse. People understand he doesn't have Nick Bosa. He's just hanging back. And if he uses that game plan he used last week against Bryce Young, I think they score 24, 25. I still think the Niners get over 30. They could probably get to 34. I'm going to say 34-24.
See but now this goes back to my thinking as a coach. Also, though, is my offense in this ball game can be my best defense.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And see, that's why I'm going to say, okay, offense. Here's what our goal is. Here's what our objective is. We cannot let Bryce Young be out there throwing for 450 yards. We can't let them have 65 or 70 snaps in this ball game. We've got to restrict the amount of snaps that they get so they don't have as many opportunities to wear out the defense and go up and down the field playing pitch and catch, because we're not a great sack team. So we cannot think that we can make them go 3 and out by getting the sack on 3rd down and it's 2nd and 10 and make it go to 3rd and 17, 3rd and 18. That's not the Niners defense this year.
That's exactly how the Niners beat the Seahawks week 1. It feels like a long time ago. They won 17-13, and the Niners had the ball for almost 39 minutes. So they didn't score a lot of points with their offense, but they did play defense with their offense, and it was a big reason why they won.
Well, I think that's the best way. Considering the status of the Niners defensively, that's the best strategy that they can have. The key thing now, does Kyle have the patience and the understanding of what he needs to do with this offense to be able to help the defense and not just make it a scoring track meet? You don't want to get into a 42-35 ball game. That's not what the goal is. I want to win, but I don't want to win big. I want to win decisively, and I want to restrict the number of snaps that Carolina gets.
Right, I see. Like you could beat the Cardinals in that kind of a game because it's Bam Knight and Michael Wilson. But in this game with Ted McMillan and Xavier Legette and Bryce Young and Rico Dowdle, there's some actual explosive playmakers on this side. Be smart on offense and win the game in a slower pace.
Correct. And by the same token, Carolina needs this win. So they're not, 2-8. They're not, calling the Beacons band and making arrangements to come pack up their
like
furniture.
Arizona was last week.
Correct. These guys are looking for the playoffs. They're a half a game out of first place. So they're going to approach this game as a must-win situation. And so I've got to be able to take the starch out of their sails and be able to restrict their ability offensively to utilize the weapons that they have. So the best for me is a good offense.
I like that. It's funny. I saw Robert Saleh in the locker room after the Niners beat the Seahawks week 1. He was so happy. It was his first game back from getting fired with the Jets. And he said, man, if only we had this kind of an offense in New York that could just hold the ball, we never would have lost. I mean, he was so overjoyed to have a ball control offense. That's exactly what he needs right now.
Well, he does need it. The Niners need a ball control offense to help the defense. As a coach, you got to sit down with your staff and say, okay, what do we need to do, or what do we have to do to be able to win the game? Okay, we got to reduce the number of snaps our defense is on the field. The best way to do that is to control the ball offensively, have long drives, chew up the clock, be efficient, no penalties, no sacks, no giveaways, no FIPS, as we call it, fumbles, interceptions, penalties, and sacks. And, that way, the fewer snaps that you get defensively, Saleh will be happy.
Well, I mean, you got an offense where Christian McCaffrey's catching 77% of his targets, George Kittle's catching 90% of his targets, that you should be able to stay on the field and matriculate up the field slowly if you are smart. So that's got to be the game plan. And with that in mind, I think it's time to do some prize picks. Let's get Tom on the screen. Let's get the prize picks on the screen. Tom, you're the only person to run the table so far. Let's see if you can do it again. That was quite impressive. That was 2 weeks ago. Let's start with Brock Purdy, 252.5 passing yards, more or less. Last week he went for 200.
I think he'll have more this week.
Why?
Because Kyle's greedy.
National television.
National television. He wants Troy Aikman and Joe Buck to talk about him and his great offensive pass design concepts. And so Kyle is going to be his own worst enemy on Monday night.
Because the 49ers, like, are they trying to win the Super Bowl? Yeah, but like they have lowered expectations with these injuries, and it seems like along the way he's trying to set the record straight on certain narratives, pad some stats, get some guys into the Pro Bowl, and if they make it to the Super Bowl, great. But in the meantime, Christian McCaffrey's going to get 2,000 yards from scrimmage. George Kittle's going to be an all-pro. Well, maybe not, but he's going to make sure the conversation goes a certain way with certain players.
Yes, he is.
Okay, fair enough. It's his team. Bryce Young, 203.5 passing yards, more or less.
You said 203?
203.
I'll say more.
Jeez. He really did have a stretch where he was throwing nothing, but last week, 448, and the Niners pretty much just give you a 6-yard throw if you want it.
Well, they're going to look at the Jacoby Brissett video, and they're going to say, holy Toledo, this is like,
Holy Toledo.
a buffet.
Who was it that said Holy Toledo? Who was the guy with the A's? Once upon it?
No, Bill King, the
Bill
great.
King. I lost you. You lost me. What do you think? More or less?
What are you looking now?
McCaffrey.
More.
Rushing yards. 71. Okay.
More.
Okay. Rico Dowdle, 76.5 rushing yards, more or less.
Fewer.
I love it. Hold on. Let's get some receivers, and then we'll lock it in. Kittle. Monday night Kittle, 57.5 receiving yards.
Oh, I say more.
Easy. Primetime Kittle. And then Ted McMillan, 59.5 receiving yards, more or fewer.
More.
It's going to be a big offensive game. Only one we don't like is Rico. We're going to flex it, submit it, download Prize Picks yourself, play $5, get $50 instantly in lineups when you use promo code COHN. There it is. Remember, Tom's the only one who's ever run the table, so make sure you're taking notes of his picks. We're both thinking the Niners are going to win this game and put up more than 30 points. If they don't, it's time to really question. I mean, if they don't win this game, I don't think they make the playoffs. So big game for the Panthers, big game for the Niners too. We'll see what they got.
Well, I tell you what, this is the game the Niners should win. Regardless of how good Carolina has been playing recently, the Niners should win the ball game. They've got advantages offensively, and if they're utilized correctly, it's a moot point.
Yeah, and the real tough test is going to be next week in Cleveland. This game has to go off without any hitches. No big turnovers. Don't beat yourself. When the Niners lose, when Kyle Shanahan loses, he tends to beat himself. This would be that week, so play clean football. Tom, thank you very much.
You're welcome, Grant. Enjoy the game.
Yeah, one super chat before we go. Josh Wyatt says, Saleh is running the defense you run when you don't care about field goals or field position. You can disagree if the offense is really that good, but Coach, why isn't red zone defense holding up?
Oh, coverage is a key issue. And the other thing about which they're not doing well defensively, from Saleh's perspective, and I'm sure he notices it, they are not setting the edge well on the perimeters on both sides of the defensive front. And that's where you're losing by not having Bosa there and some other guys. The edge, teams are not intimidated by the Niners front seven anymore. You're missing Bosa, you're missing Fred. They don't have that same ferocity. They don't have the same intensity. They don't have the same guys who can shut down what an opponent is doing. The opponents are realizing that the Niners defense is not taking away anything from what they want to do offensively. That's the bottom line.
Yeah, that's true. It's pretty much, there's a lot of things that are wide open for you. Quick throws, running play. It seems like also the Niners are playing Bryce Huff a lot more than they want to, than they should. He's a starter now for them, and he can't stop the run.
No, he's a pass rush guy, and they're not having to utilize him every down, and that's wear and tear on his body. Plus, I can take away his pass rush ability by running the ball at him and making him have to play the run on first and second down.
Yeah, what makes Bryce Huff so effective is the fact that he hasn't been playing that much the whole game. Then you get him into the fourth quarter with 2 minutes left. The other team's trying to drive down the field to tie it up, and he's fresh and wins the game for you. That's not the case anymore. Good question, Josh. Thank you so much, Tom. Thanks, everyone, for watching. Let's see what Today is essentially Wednesday down in Santa Clara, so Kyle Shanahan's going to talk. They'll have their first practice of the week. We'll see who's healthy. We'll see who's out there. Tom, thanks as always. Let's see who wins this game.
Okay. Thank you, Grant. Good luck. Enjoy.
Take care, everyone.